come check this place out, and if you like it, let me know. We have a really close relationship with the owners.
The most bizarre and brutal series of crimes in America.
Deal with them. They're trying to get that place going. So, what better way to bring 20, 30 supporters that you know for the Dynamo? Are you helping them out with that too?
And violence.
Tell me somebody how long he will be on my mind. He will be on my mind. On my mind. On my mind.
What's up, everybody? What's going on? Welcome to Gen Orange. I am muted, aren't I? Pretty sure I am. Hopefully that is not muted anymore. Guys, what is up? Gen Orange on a Wednesday, which is interesting enough as it is, but hey, we sometimes have to juggle around schedules, which is totally cool. Next week will be Thursday. I can confirm that. We've made sure of that. Unless I get sent off for a response, which always can happen at the last minute. Yeah. Man. So no playoffs. Mark, how are you feeling, sir?
What's going on, Sean?
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
Hump day. Anyways, yeah, man, no playoffs, but we already knew that, so we can carry on and move forward and look ahead.
Definitely, definitely. So, I mean, it was a bit of a rough one this past weekend. Or I guess, yeah, this past weekend. Feels like it's been longer than that. Watching the Dynamo and just unfortunately watching them play similar to kind of how they've played all season. They had plenty of opportunities. They surrendered some goals that they just should have never surrendered. And it, officially knocked them out of the playoffs and knocked us out of the playoffs. And so now we're kind of, back to where we are, to to say the least.
You know,
Go ahead, Mark.
no, it's crazy because even though I think we got knocked out once we lost to LAFC, and we still want to watch these guys play. We still want to watch these guys improve. We still want to watch these guys battle for the crest, for the shirt that they wear. Mainly because myself personally, I want to see who really wants to be here next year, because next year is going to be a lot different. I hope different coach, different managers, hopefully a whole new batch of new players, and a whole different attitude. So this is the beginning.
I mean, at least that's the hope, right? Is you get a new coach in, a coach with, with a known streak of developing players, a coach with a known streak of being able to impart discipline upon players, and you combine all that, and your hope is you've constructed a good enough roster to compete and take it to the promised land of MLS Cup. At the very least, the promised land of playoffs at this point would be great next year. But hey, we'll dive into the coaching discussion a little bit later. I wanted to kind of run down some of the topics we're going to cover today, so that those who are in the Discord chat, first of all, what's up, Discord chat? Second of all, they can add in any thoughts that they have around these particular subjects. I see Darby in the waiting room, and I'm very tempted to pull her in because I know their time tonight is limited. But Darby, if you're able to listen, I will send me a message. Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Didn't think she meant to be in that room. So
I just want to review the game from Sunday real quick. It started off bad right off the bat. They scored in the first 2 minutes. And, I know Seren had made a mistake right there. And then I think it was Baird scored the goal.
yeah.
But then after that, I mean, like, life came into them, and they held possession. They had advantage in possession. They held the advantage in shots on goal. They had opportunities on top of opportunities on top of opportunities. And like we've seen for the whole season, it seems like they don't take advantage of these opportunities, and they're not putting the ball on the back of the net, and that's what at the end killed them.
Yeah, I absolutely 100%. So real quick, the topics we're going to cover, we're going to talk about the match coming up on Sunday, RSL versus Houston. We're going to talk about, we're going to review the match from this past Sunday. Man, it's been a long week. That's only Wednesday. It's the best part. Review the match from Sunday, RSL versus Houston. We're going to talk about DeMarcus Beasley's last match on Sunday, coming up this Sunday. Some information tied to that. We're going to talk about Zlatan, because you can't have LA Galaxy come into town and you can't not talk about Zlatan Ibrahimovic. And one of the things I want to talk about tied to that is basically how do you, as the Dynamo, what do you do and how do you approach stopping Zlatan? Because I feel like as far as LA Galaxy is concerned, if you stop Zlatan, you kind of stop most of their attack. I also want to talk about something that I had confirmed earlier this week, but I already kind of knew, but getting it confirmed definitely made it more kind of an official thing, and I'd brought up before, which is under Wilmer Cabrera, the locker room and kind of player access in terms of interviews and things like that were basically locked down. They didn't allow media any real access to the players or to technical staff or otherwise, and that was kind of a Wilmer thing, and I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about the implications of opening that up. I also want to talk about coaching. You and I have been talking. I saw on Facebook, Glenn Davis mentioned that Diego Alonso is now available, and want to talk about the possibility of getting him, what that would mean, and then dive in a little deeper to who we would pick, given the opportunity to pick our coach, and obviously within reason, I think needs to be prefaced there. And then we're going to open it up for kind of the last 30 minutes of the show from about 8:20 to 8:50 for your questions, your thoughts, you being the fans, our listeners. We know some of you guys are out at the DMB retirement party tonight, and all the more power to you. But if you're there, feel free to hop in voice chat and tell us how it is. Tell us what it's like. Wish I could be there. kind of one of those things that just wasn't going to work out. And then, that's kind of the show today is all those topics, and we'll probably get to some more stuff, but that's at least the plan on topics. So Mark, you had already started talking a bit about the RSL versus Houston match and kind of how we started, and I want to let you dive a little deeper into it, and kind of give your thoughts on the whole match.
So, I mean, from the beginning, like I said earlier, I mean, it started off rough, giving away that early goal in the first minute or two. But then afterwards, I mean, after the fifth minute, after they kind of settled down, and up until halftime, I mean, they took control of the game. They were in RSL's side of the field for, I want to say, maybe 30 of the 40 minutes that were left in that first half, and they kept control of the ball. They had shots on goal. They had opportunities. They had set pieces. They had corner kicks, and yet no goals. No goals. No ball in the back of the net, and that's basically been the whole season in a nutshell. I mean, these guys, they create opportunities, and they can't seem to make the opportunity worthwhile. They should have been up by 3 goals. I mean, they had 2 offside calls, out in the game, but they had opportunities. This game should have been won easily, in my opinion, by then.
I don't know about easily. I think we have to give RSL some credit. They have some fantastic players. Rusnak is one of them. The way that guy plays is just absurd at times. I thought the Dynamo did a pretty good job with him for the most part defensively. But, he's always going to get his. He's one of those players that is just he quietly goes under the radar, in my opinion, for a lot of stars in the league, if you will. But I think he's good enough to compete on the level of some of the best players in the league.
For sure.
But yeah, I feel kind of like you do in general. I mean, RSL scored their goal, and then the Dynamo kind of woke up, and we were playing our match for the longest I think I've seen us play our match on the road after, the first 5 or 6 total matches of the season. I felt like it was the Dynamo tactically and strategically that we've been asking for all season. Go out and play your way. Don't worry about how the other team plays. But, go out and just press, and make them fearful of you and your attack. And I felt like we did that. And I felt like we created a boat ton of chances in that, like you said, about 30 minutes or so leading into halftime, where we were without a doubt the better of the two teams heading into halftime. And I even felt coming out of halftime we were decent, and still putting our, pushing forward to get that extra goal. But I think we just gave up. We pushed so hard that we opened ourselves up to the counterattack even more. And I felt like RSL really took advantage of that, and the foul that led into free kicks and things like that, or fouls that led into free kicks and things like that, I think ultimately spelled kind of the demise of the team.
And if you think about it, I mean, Tomas hits the goal, and I think the 30th minute or something like that. And it's 1-1. I think they really had that attitude of, you know what, we're not making the playoffs. Let's play spoilers. These guys they're fighting for positioning.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. They went to RSL and they played their game. They had control. for that first half, and for the beginning of the second half. And I think it just, like I said in the past show, there's that little bit of moment in time, like those 10 to 15 minutes where they just let everything go and everything unravels.
Yep.
And and again, I mean, I don't know if it's discipline, I don't know if it's fatigue, I don't know if it's lack of interest. Honestly, I kind of question the substitutions on Davies' part. I didn't like the fact that he took out Mauro and put in Ramirez. I think he should have taken out either Tomas or Mac in there and put Ramirez up again with Mauro together, because we've seen that combination has worked and it's really sparked the team as of late since his arrival. And but yeah, it's one of those things. Like I said, you see those glimpses because I mean this team has talent. There's no denying that. It's a talented group of guys. It's just there's no. I don't want to say there's no true leadership, because I think Davies is doing the best that he can given the circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, like, there's no. It seems like there's no direction. Like once things start to not go their way for a certain while, they seem to just get fed up and just say, screw it, whatever. We're not doing anything in this here anyway. So, and it's a little bit, disappointing because, like I said, before halftime, they could have been up 3-1, maybe even more. That's what I meant when I said that it seemed like they should have won this game easily the way they were playing offensively in the first half, because they had plenty of scoring opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes the ball doesn't roll your way, and that's what's happening right now in this whole season, it seems like. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating because ultimately what this team has struggled with is the same stuff that it feels like we've struggled with probably for the last 2 or 3 seasons. And it feels like, as a fan, it feels like the spinning of tires almost. Like we throw out a bunch of different ideas, even from a tactical standpoint, coach throws out a bunch of different ideas, technical staff throw out a bunch of different ideas. We bring in different players, we switch formations, we do all these different things, and yet the game still has kind of the same ebb and flow for the most part. I mean, there are times where we'll kind of take control and go from there, but I think we see kind of the identity of this team, unfortunately, right now is a team that's, eventually we're going to give up a goal, and if we don't have a lead, we're going to chase the game, and that'll put us in position to potentially, level the match. But once we score that goal, after a certain period of time, our players are going to start sitting further or deeper and deeper, especially on the road. I
think what we're witnessing.
Go ahead.
I think what we're witnessing is basically the ceiling of this group. We're at the ceiling. Like this showcase has to show the front office, like, hey, this is as much as this team can go. Presently equipped.
Yeah,
right?
I'm holding myself. Yeah, keep going.
So it's one of those things where, I want to say that, I mean, there's gonna be a few players that don't come back next year. We all know that,
yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
So given the fact that you're gonna keep a certain amount of players, this is the ceiling for this group. Now, as a GM, Matt Jordan, the owners, and all that, and all those people who make those decisions of what kind of players they need to bring in, and all that other stuff, they need to see who they're gonna keep and what player they can bring in to step up that level of competition for the team that for the players that are staying, and who's gonna raise the level. Because as we can see, we always talk about MLS 1.0, MLS 2.0, MLS 3.0, all that stuff, and for a while there we were stuck at 1.0 where everybody's up at 3.0, right?
Yep.
And now, I mean, we've brought in some players, and we brought some real good players. I believe if I do say so myself. And now it's just having that next batch of players that are going to take those players up to the next level, who are going to make them work harder, who are going to make them want it more. Because it's one of those things where you have you have self motivation, but then when you see somebody else go out there and go out there and get it, a la Zlatan with LA Galaxy, it motivates other players. Like, hey, if this guy's giving his all, man, let me go. This is the guy I want to go be on the pitch with. This is the guy I want to go run through a wall for. You know?
Yeah.
So
I don't. So I disagree with. I mean, I agree with the notion that as far as this club is currently constructed, that's it for kind of this construction, if you will. But I think that this team has suffered from a few different things. Number one, and I've mentioned this a few episodes prior on the other show, where, you know, from what I understood from multiple sources and getting it confirmed from multiple sources, Wilmer Cabrera, as far as a coach, he was very demanding in a way that players don't typically respond to, whether it's a elite top level player or a player that is just starting out. The way he coached, the way he mentored players was more like a guy who believed he knew everything there was to know when it came to the game and wanted you to figure it out as you went along, but was going to give you direction and was going to give you instructions as to how to do that, but in a way that wasn't conducive to your growth. A perfect example to that, and I want to bring this up because I think it's important in talking about the Dynamo as currently constructed. You know, Memo's first match with the Dynamo, he came on as a sub, and Wilmer sent him onto the pitch, and his exact phrase when he was sent on the pitch was, okay, go out there and run. It wasn't go out there and, you know, go out there and you know, do what I've told you to do. Go out there and
be
pass
creative.
the ball. Go out there, be creative. What, you know, I say he gave him, you know, he gives direction and guidance, but I kind of feel like that's not even direction and guidance. That's, hey, just go out there and run. Like, that's not conducive to a young player's growth or even mentality. You know, it just really is confusing.
So let me ask you a question since you brought that up real quick.
Sure.
How do you think that has stunned Albert Elise's growth per se? Because he's the player that we all focus on, right? And when he came into the Dynamo at first, you know, he was exciting, this young player, exciting, hungry, ready to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, the beginning of last year for the first half, he was dominating. You know, some people, you know, I would hear on FS1 or I would hear on ESPN or whatever MLS related shows that, you know, he's up there with one of the best wingers in MLS, right?
Yeah.
When he's on.
Yeah.
But you saying, you know, Wilmer not having really teaching these players or giving them direction or helping them in their development, do you think that stunned Albert Elise's growth, like to where? Because I mean, honestly, like I haven't seen Albert go to the next level from last year to this year.
No, I think I think you've figured it out. You've kind of unlocked the key to why, when I started hearing these things a little bit, you know, when I started hearing these things getting confirmed, it was at that point that it all started to come into focus. Why have players not made it from RGV into the Dynamo roster? Why do players that make it from RGV to the Dynamo roster struggle so much to fit into the team? Why do players seem to look lost on the pitch? You know, no matter when they're brought onto the pitch, whether it's a starter or, you know, or a substitute. You know, why have players, you know, potential's been so high? They've come in with hype even from outside of Dynamo fans and outside of Dynamo media. The players have come in with plenty of hype and they've been lauded as, you know, the future of MLS. And then they get to the Dynamo and it's like they've completely lost understanding of how to play the game at the most basic levels at times. You know, the list goes on, but you've kind of figured out why I started to, as I took a step back and started to kind of think about that in particular, the kind of Wilmer not being a very good true coach. He's more of a manager, not a coach. Why that was such a big deal for this particular club. The way this club wants to go about things, you have to have a guy that's both a manager and a coach, but specifically a guy who can coach, who can develop player talent. And I think in terms of Albert Elise, and I'm going to extend this to Romell Kyoto, because I think for as much of a hothead and for as much as a flake as that guy's become, I think if he had had a coach out of the gate that A, demanded discipline, and B, enforced it and taught him how to be the right type of player out of the gate, I think we would be talking about a totally different Romel Kyoto. He showed the flashes that made him a fantastic player.
Well, I mean, and I'll shoot this out to the guys on Discord, and we can chat about it on there. But I honestly thought Kyoto was a better player when he first came in than Alberth Elise. All the hype was around Elise because where he's coming from Monterrey, from Rayados, and him being on the national team already at such a young age. But Kyoto came out the gate blazing.
Yeah,
he was shooting goals from outside the box. He was free kicks outside the box, making goals. He showed power. He showed a bunch of composure and a lot of skill. And honestly, I was excited. I mean, I was like, wow, this guy lined up next to at the time Kugel, and then Alberth Elise on the right with all his speed and the way they were going off the bat. And I remember that I can't remember what game it was, but I think it might have been against Seattle or somebody, where Kubel finally scored his Dynamo goal, or whatever, and they were having a rampage of goals that game. But
yeah,
Kyoto was all over that place, was all over that game, and I was excited, man. I was pleasantly surprised.
Well, I don't want to dwell on this too much because we can talk about that in kind of the last half hour of the show, but.
For sure.
It's just, it's always interesting to me to take a look at the situation the team finds themselves in, looking at matches. And every time we look at a match, I always find myself going back to that point of, as much as I think a lot of fans want to place so much pressure on the players to perform, I feel like there was not an accountability levied on Wilmer specifically to make sure that he was getting the most out of players. That it was more, okay, Wilmer's just the way he is, and we're going to just be okay with it. And I think that's where my frustration maybe with the organization comes from. But hey, they've remedied it, I feel like, and they're approaching it, and that's not far away. We'll talk about the coaching situation and what's next for that. But I want to right now talk about what I feel like is probably, at least, it is the one storyline out of this season, minus Christian Ramirez, that to me is the biggest bright spot, the biggest spotlight that at least put some shine on the Dynamo season. And this is still, technically, we haven't ended the season yet, but this is DeMarcus Beasley's last season. He is retiring after Sunday's match. And there's going to be a pretty big on-field celebration for DeMarcus Beasley and all that he's meant to the Dynamo, all he's meant to, U.S. soccer, all he's meant to MLS in the time that he's been in MLS, and so on and so forth. And they're going to give out a captain's armband for the first, I think, 7,000 fans or some number like that through the gates. And they're pretty slick looking. I'm really, kind of upset that I can't make this match due to work. Because I would absolutely get one of those armbands without a doubt.
Likewise.
But some other things. Texting Army has been working on a TIFO that they're going to unveil. I know that there were some kind of teasers put out there by both the official Dynamo account, by the TA account, and some other people as well. And I can tell you, having been part of that TIFO construction process, even if Sergio is going to give me crap about me talking about this, but because he'll say that I wasn't there and I didn't work, but that's not true. Pat can vouch for me. Pat says all fans get the captain's band. He'll try to grab a couple. You demand, Pat. Yeah, so what I did is help put grommets onto the TIFO, the TIFO, to make sure that it stays where it's going to be. See, Pat backing me up over there. Appreciate that, Pat. And what was funny about that, I'm going to just because it's a great story, Pat and I were basically tasked, okay, go get more grommets, because we didn't have enough. I think we had like 12 to start with. We had like a pack of 12. And so we were like, okay, cool, we're going to go to Home Depot. They're going to have grommets. So we get to Home Depot, and They don't have the right size, and the one pack they have is it's a kit, which includes the grommet hammer and thing, and it was a pack of 12, and it was like $7 or something ridiculous. And so we were like, okay, well, where else has it? So he's looking on his phone. He goes, oh, Lowe's has it. So we're like, all right. So we head over to Lowe's. We get to Lowe's, and they don't have any either. They've got the exact same, like one kit, no grommets of the right size. And at this point, we've already like wasted an hour and a half because we keep getting text messages from people saying, hey, pick this up too. Pick this up as well. Like, okay. And so finally we end up going to Hobby Lobby, which was like a 10 to 15, it was like a 15-minute drive, actually. A 15-minute drive from the location where the Tifo was being painted and worked on to that Hobby Lobby. But we'd already wasted like an hour and a half trying to find the freaking grommets, which we have to do what we needed to do. So we go to Hobby Lobby and get the grommets and then head back. And we get back, and it's like 3 hours have passed at this point, just by the time everything was said and done. And I guess 2.5, and we get back, and Sergio's just riding me like nobody's business, man. He's just like, it was just hilarious. He's like, oh yeah, now you decide to show up now that most of the painting's already done. And I'm like, dude, I was one of the few people that had a vehicle that was willing to drive to go find this stuff, and yeah, it took a while. It wasn't like we were just twiddling our thumbs. We literally spent 90% of that time walking around these different hardware stores trying to find the freaking stuff we were looking for. And of course, the people are, only so helpful in finding stuff. But anyways, so there's a TA Tifo. I know that was kind of stupid and long-winded, but it made me chuckle to go through that. And yeah, it looked, I can tell you from having seen the nearly finished, completed Tifo that it looks pretty darn good. It is understated, but in a very positive way. I think a lot of people are gonna like it for being as kind of understated as it is. And I think, some players you want a kind of busy Tifo that's got a lot going on, and I think this one it's understated, kind of almost in a way that Beasley himself is. He's not a showy, flashy kind of guy. He's got that in him, but he's kind of a guy that's going to go out there and he's going to put in the work and put in the effort, but he's not going to sit there and he's not going to sit there and applaud himself for being the best player in the world. So, Mark, what are your thoughts on DeMarcus Beasley and his career and his time with the Dynamo? And
No, I think it's great. I mean, legendary career. Obviously, he's one of the few American players before, the whole Pulisic, the whole overboard right now, that made it in Europe and other leagues around the world. Kind of paved the way, and I think he's the only U.S. player to play in 4 World Cups, if I'm correct.
Yep, 4 World Cups.
And and obviously we would love it to be under different circumstances where they're riding into the playoffs with and all this other stuff, with a chance to win a cup for him, but and thankfully we won something with him on our team last year with the U.S. Open Cup, and one of those things, as far as one of my memories of Beasley's career would be during his time with the Dynamo would be just a more recent one, when we got back to the Champions League, and they say it's tough to play in Central America because of the humidity, the conditions of the field. But Beasley, being that wily veteran who's played everywhere, is just another game for him. He stepped up and he scored the goal.
Yep.
And it's great. Like I said, I wish it was under different circumstances where he was leaving on a high note with us, but hopefully this last game on Sunday would be one of the highlights of his career, where we show him our appreciation for his time here and for the career he gave us throughout the 20 years he's been playing.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, that is probably one of the highlights, I think, of his time with the Dynamo was that goal scored against Guastatoya. It was such a fantastic goal, and I felt like I'd been waiting for Beasley to break out and score a goal for 2 or 3 seasons, it felt like. And so seeing him score that goal, it was just I mean, it was electric after he scored that goal. And, I think just when I look back at his time with the Dynamo, I think I have to give him props because no matter what people may say about his time with the Dynamo and the way the Dynamo were run during his time here, he stuck with it. He didn't ask to be traded. He didn't demand to be traded. He didn't ask to be moved to another team. He just kind of dealt with it, and he dealt with it in a professional manner. He went about his business, match in, match out. And yeah, there were times that he got injured, but he never let it affect, I feel like, his play on the pitch. I feel like he's always played as hard as he can play. And I don't, there are players out there, Kyoto being one of them, that, that's not how they approach things. And if there was one thing I wish we had gotten out of his time here, it's that he would have imparted that and really shared that with that professional attitude and how to be a professional with the rest of the players on the team. And I don't know if that's his, if it's on him for not kind of imparting that or passing that on to the other players on the team. I don't think it is. I really don't. DeMarcus seems like he'd be the type of guy that would be more than willing to share. But I do have to wonder, I have to wonder maybe if there is some impact of coaching too. And if things are the way they are and were the way they were, does that impact, Beasley and his time here as well? And, maybe put him in a position where he's not comfortable, stepping up and saying, hey guys, you need to chill out, for whatever reason, you need to be more professional. You need to be more focused on your play and less focused on off the pitch play.
The thing with DeMarcus, to be honest, he's always been a constant professional from everywhere I see. When I watched him play in Puebla, PSV, he was with Man City before Man City was even cool, and he's always been a constant professional. I mean, Chicago Fire, all the other stuff. And the thing is, I think as players come and go, sometimes they forget that playing soccer is a privilege. Yeah. It's not given, to everybody. Otherwise, we all be out there bringing in money, playing the game that we love, right? And I think that never left DeMarcus's heart and head for and he knows that. And he knows that his time is coming to an end, and he appreciates it more. Which, obviously going back again to what I said before, it's a shame that we couldn't, have him go off in the sunset with a winning season. But through thick and thin, he's been a constant professional since he's gotten here in Houston. Because let's face it, he got here in Houston, and his time in Houston hasn't really been all that, great as far as the club standpoint. As far as going, I think we only had one winning season, which is 2017 when he was here, and the Open Cup. But aside from that, he's always been there. When he's available, he always goes out and gives his all. He's always playing hard.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And look, if that's what people say about your career, is that you were always the consummate professional, you were always the guy that they could trust and count on to be the responsible player both on and off the pitch. You were the guy that everybody could look to be the example of how to play the game right and how to go about your business right. And if the worst thing I have to say is that he didn't really get a chance to, in my opinion, really impart upon current players how to be better professionals, if that's the worst I got to say about the guy, then he's doing plenty right. And it's not a surprise his career lasted as long as it did. Because he is that guy that teams can count on when they bring him in to be that consummate professional, be the guy that's always going to go out there and give it his all, no matter what is happening within the organization, within coaching, within the technical staff, or otherwise. And I did see a note from someone earlier that they talked to Beasley at the retirement thing this evening and asked him, kind of what his plans were after the season's over, and he said he wants to stick around Houston. I guess he likes the city, which is good. And he wants to get into the business side of things. So maybe that means that he'll find a position within the Dynamo organization, or, within the academies, or, maybe even with the Dash. I don't know. I guess we'll see. But I, for one, have no problems, no matter where he lands within the Dynamo organization, as long as it's where where he lands, because I think that he does have a football IQ, and he can be a mentor if given the opportunity. I feel like to certain players.
Yeah, I would love him to be a part of the Dynamo organization after his playing time, especially in the academy, because as a up and coming player, who else do you want to have looking up to than a 4-time World Cup player, a player who's played in England, Mexico, and all over the world?
Yeah,
What else do you want?
for sure. Well, guys,
What better example?
absolutely. Well, hey, if you're watching right now or listening right now, do us a favor. If you haven't already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. If you haven't already liked this stream or this video, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you haven't had a chance to share this out with your friends and family, do us a favor. You don't have to do it right now, but definitely share it out after this is over. The stream will still be up on YouTube for everybody to hit and watch it after the fact and listen after the fact. And guys, hey, I know you've asked for this for a while, and I am working on and nearly done with getting us as a podcast format, audio only, set up on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, and more. I started the process earlier today, and I'm just waiting for approval from iTunes and Google Play Music. Once we're approved, every week I'll be uploading the audio as needed to the Podbean website that I've set up for us, which will be the podcast host, and then that'll upload into the various appear on the various other platforms where your favorite podcasts play, which is kind of cool because I know there's been a lot of people that have been asking for a long time to have an audio version of the show that they can listen to during the week on their way to and from work and during work, so yeah, I've done the legwork, guys, and I hope you guys repay that in kind by once again liking and subscribing and sharing, especially once we have the podcast set up, the actual podcast set up, so that your friends and family can just subscribe to the podcast and get all the episodes as they go through their week. That would be great.
Yeah.
For sure.
Guys, like, subscribe, and share.
For
but
sure.
But now moving on to the other side of the pitch, I know all the focus is going to be on Beasley, but there's a monster on the other side of the field that we have to go up against this Sunday by the name of
You're right,
Zlatan.
man. No. That's not the monster on the pitch, dude. That Bingham character for LA Galaxy, he's a tough nut to crack, man. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Yeah, so Zlatan, man. What are your thoughts on Zlatan, dude?
I mean, look, man, if Messi and Ronaldo weren't never born, he would be the best player in the last 10 years. And that's really amazing to say, man, because this guy, he's gone every league, every country, every field, and he's produced. And he does it here with ease. 37 years old, talks a whole bunch of mess, but the thing that I respect most about him is that he backs up whatever he talks. His talk is never louder than his walk. So, I mean, and his walk is pretty huge, so that's why he can talk as much as he does.
Oh, man. I don't know about his talk being never louder than his walk. I think sometimes he does get a bit boisterous.
Yeah, I mean, but to each their own. I mean, trust me, I'm not for having people talk, all this mess or whatever. I just want to watch you play and if you got something to say it on the pitch, right? But he has a lot to say on the pitch. So hopefully, I mean, we can bring him another frowny like we did last year.
Well, let me ask.
At least this time at home.
Yeah, let me ask you a question. How do you stop Zlatan if you're Davy Arnaud and the Dynamo defense? What do you do? How do you approach him?
See, well, from the formation that I've seen, I mean, they play him solo up top, right? But the biggest difference now is that he has such a gifted player on his side in Pavon. That guy has changed the dimension for LA Galaxy since he's got here. But if I was coaching and I had the task of how do I stop Zlatan, I guess the $1 million question for this Sunday. I mean, I would have Struna on him like like white on rice, you know, and then for Mayor right there, right behind him, just tag teaming him all over, just annoying him.
You know, I have an idea of how you slow Zlatan down at least a little bit.
But without breaking his leg or anything, Sean. Come on, let's
No,
be
no, no,
fair.
no. You'll like this. I'm gonna hire some of the ladies from Houston, around Houston, and I'm gonna send them to his hotel room the night before, and I'm gonna get him so distracted and so busy that he forgets about the match. Because I really honestly think that's just about the only way to actually stop him. Now, slowing him down, however, you know, that's a different story. I think Vera actually, when he's marked up on him 1v1 and is basically tasked with kind of chasing him around the pitch, I think Vera does a fantastic job of that and creating a situation where when Vera's not following him around, you know, and has released him, it's because he knows that Struna or in this case, Fuenmayor, I'm hoping, will be the one that's on him. And to be fair, Struna and Fuenmayor are both players that will get physical. And my only concern is Zlatan drawing a foul, potential card situation from Fuenmayor. I don't think I have to worry about it as much with Struna, but I do think with Fuenmayor that is a definite concern that has to be taken into account.
Well, I mean, you know, Zlatan's he's always in the box. I mean, you think he's 18 yards outside the box, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's in the box, right? So the concern is always, if you foul the guy, and then there's a penalty called on you, and that's just what great players do. But you can't be scared of being physical with a guy like that, because a lot of times we'll be physical with you if you're not physical with him. He'll push you around. He'll make sure that make you look silly. So you got to give it your all. I mean, and for my I mean, this is one of the learning things the learning processes that he has to go through. This is a world class player, and if you want to be part of the starting 11, especially for next year, you got to show up because more of these players are coming.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, the league is expanding in terms of talent and overall level of play. It feels like year over year, if not just transfer window by transfer window. Perfect example is, we've got Pavone, Pity, even though Pity came in and hasn't really shown to be all that fantastic, and other players that have come in these last couple of windows have just been outstanding for the most part. And the level of play has definitely improved, to say the least, across almost the entire league. And so from a Fuenmayor standpoint, you have to expect or hope that he's up to the task, that he's not going to wilt under the pressure, that he's not going to give in to Zlatan. And we know that Zlatan, even though some of us like to believe Zlatan, all he does is show it on the pitch. He does a lot of talking on the pitch as well, and he does a lot of little antics that get under other players' skin, and it's on Fuenmayor and Struna, if both of those are the starters, to deal with that and not let him get under their skin. I think if Fuenmayor isn't careful, Fuenmayor will find himself in a situation where he's giving up a penalty in the box and then turning around and giving a penalty kick situation. And while we can't play spoilers in this match, we can't end LA Galaxy's hopes of playoffs. I still like to think that we could come out, especially at home, and win a match to kind of send Beasley off proper, and at the same time leave a sour taste in LA Galaxy's mouth. And I'm okay if that's kind of how the end of the season goes at this point, because frankly, we've only got one match. That's all we got left. But, if that's how it goes, it's how it goes. But I'd much rather that outcome than us just get absolutely dominated and give up a hat trick to Zlatan, because frankly, we'll never hear the end of it for at least the rest of the week, because ESPN and FS1 and even the Champions League coverage on TNT are just going to be talking all about Zlatan at that point.
Oh, for sure. That's one of the things that we need that would show who here is playing for pride for themselves and pride for the team, pride for the shirt. I mean, it's a big opportunity for these guys, like I said before. And,
to see who wants to come back for next season and be part of this team. And this is one of those chances to really showcase that, Che, I still want to be part of this team, and I know this is the start of a new beginning, so let's start now and let's beat Zlatan and LA Galaxy.
Absolutely. Definitely, for sure. So, we talked about this a little bit earlier too, about how this season and the last kind of few seasons since Wilmer took over, the locker room has been more closed off and limited access allowed for members of the media, and access to players for interviews, during practice, before practice, after practice was always limited. Before matches, after matches was always limited. And those restrictions have loosened substantially by the Dynamo since Wilmer has left. And in fact, I think we've seen the impact of that, because I think in the first 2 weeks of Wilmer being gone, I think I saw 15 more articles about players and tactics and, interviews with front office personnel, interviews with players, in articles in like I said, in that first 2 weeks. I think I saw more of those than I've seen in the last 3 years combined. It was a pretty substantial and marked difference between how it was during Wilmer's tenure and as soon as he was gone. I wanted to get your thought on that, and hear from you. Okay, sorry.
No, I mean,
looking at something.
No, I got you, Sean. But no, for sure. I mean, I've seen it all over on Twitter. I've seen it on on numerous social medias that the way the atmosphere around the Dynamo compound now and HSP and on the stadium and game day and all that stuff, it's more relaxed. I kind of want to say media has more access to them. I've seen a lot more posts. I've seen a lot more activity as far as media for the Dynamo ever since Wilmer has left. And I think that's a great thing. It's one of those things that if the team was succeeding and the team was on top of the, MLS food chain per se, then you let Wilmer do what he does, because obviously there's success going on, right? It's like the whole Bill Belichick and the Patriots thing. Bill Belichick can answer however he wants to, because guess what? He has rings on his finger. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case with Wilmer. So I was a little disappointed in the length of time it took. I guess the front office to kind of get to Wilmer, like, hey, you need to change your approach, or to like maybe, or to get rid of him, right? Because you can see he would get like that. He would be on the cusp of being on a high seat, but then he would go on a little run or do something nice. Because I mean, like the beginning of the season, it looked real good, and we're like, oh wow, I guess they finally figured it out. Whatever, I think we started 7-3-3, and everything was going well. So obviously whatever Wilmer wanted to do, Wilmer got, because he's showing positive outcomes on the pitch. And you can have that when you're winning. And winning covers up a lot of things. But the second you start losing, and the second you start losing really bad, and the second you start losing every week, and you don't win games for two months, then it becomes an issue. And then you can't act a certain way like you did when you were winning, because you don't have that option anymore, because you have to answer to media, you have to answer to the fans and the supporters and the people who love this club, because they want to see this club do good. Obviously he does too, but I mean, then what's going on? We want to know what's going on. And the fact that he was so closed off, it rubbed people the wrong way. It's kind of like that Bill O'Brien effect with the Texans that they have going on with him too. I mean, because this team has a lot of players that we love to support. I mean, we love Mauro, we love Memo, Beasley, all those guys. But
it's hard sometimes because you never hear from those guys when under the Wilmer tenure. You never heard from those guys really. But I would never hear a player interview unless it was something scheduled with one of the main guys from Fox Sports or ESPN or something like that. But now you hear them on local or Twitter or just hey somebody that is trying to do some freelancing goes up to them, asking questions, and they're willing to answer now.
I think one of the things that's come out of having more open access for media is I feel as a fan, it's easier to connect with players when you hear from them regularly, when you get their very real, very raw thoughts and emotions coming after a match, whether it's a victory, a loss, a draw, whether it was a last minute winner, a last minute loser, whatever it is. And when you get those kind of real responses, I think it allows you to kind of connect with a player as a fan. And that I feel like if there was anything that's been missing from the last few years in particular that the Dynamo got right early in their tenure, it's that in particular. It's that it was really hard for players for fans to connect with those players because they just didn't get to hear from them regularly. And it was like, in some regards, it was like the players played their match and then that was kind of it. It was very much a once a week kind of ordeal, and everybody just kind of went around about their business. If you look at the most successful clubs in MLS from a publicity standpoint, from a fan support standpoint, it's clubs that embrace their fans, basically 24/7. They're sorry. Distraction, bad time. But they're clubs that embrace their fans 24/7. They're clubs that empower their players to be connected and connect with their fans. And that to me is, I feel like one of the things that the Dynamo really need to focus as they kind of move forward is, especially with whoever the new coach may end up being, is being able to allow players, especially these guys that they bring in that are supposed to take the mantle of the team on their shoulders and be the leader when they're coming in and help fire up the rest of the team or help engage the fan base or whatever it may be. It's if they open up those players and let them be themselves, whether it's with the media or with fans or in general, I think it just creates an environment where the fans are going to embrace it more. No matter who they bring in, I feel like fans, honestly, I feel like this team, the fans would have been more okay with the way things went down if they could have been more connected with the players, if they'd have been able to hear from the players more often. Because I feel like at times maybe Quioto gets a bad rap because nobody ever gets to hear what he's got to say until he's at that point where he's ready to call it a day, or whatever. I just feel like we get to this point where everybody, everybody wants that transparency and wants to know what's going on. But if you can't talk to the people that are dealing with it, you just really never know. You never find out what they're really dealing with.
No, yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. I mean, look, MLS is trying to be the next big league, right, around the world. Well, guess what? All these leagues around the world allow access to all their players from all around the world because all these players come from different parts of the world. So there's so much access to these world-class players, and yet for a team like the Dynamo, who I hope aspirations are to become one of the top teams in MLS, you have to be more open. You have to be more accessible, and I think they've gotten that notion. And I think that moving forward, at least from what I've seen the last couple of months since Wilmer has left, that's a step they're taking, and that's good. But you were talking about new coaches. Some big news the last couple of days of a big coach being let go. That might be a possibility for the Dynamo if they're interested.
Mm-hmm. You gonna share it, or you just gonna make me wait?
Yeah. So For those who haven't heard, Diego Alonso, the coach of the Rayados and previously of Pachuca, has been let go by Rayados after the 2-0 loss in their Clásico against Tigres. For reasons unknown, I'm pretty sure that the hierarchy of Rayados were kind of disappointed and losing their Clásico 2-0. But Clásicos are what they are. They're Clásicos. Sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some. I was a bit surprised myself to see the fact that he was let go because he's been a great coach in Mexico for the last, I want to say 5-6 years between both Pachuca and Monterrey. He's won with both clubs. Obviously, recently winning the Champions League with Monterrey this past edition, and winning. I think he won a league title with Pachuca, and he won Champions League with Pachuca as well. So, thoughts, Sean? Would this be a guy that you'd be happy the Dynamo go on and pursue?
Would I be happy? I think the answer is absolutely yes. I don't think there's any doubt this guy is the type of coach that would fit with the Dynamo system pretty darn well. He fits what I've requested out of a coach. I'm going to throw something at you that I want you to consider. The Dynamo go on record at this at the DFFC Dynamo Fans for Change symposium. That's what we'll call it for now, the symposium with the front office. And Jordan goes on record and basically says that they're working to line up a coach, and their intent is to announce the coach within the month of October. Number 2, that they've had a lot of queries from various coaches. Number 3, Diego Alonso suddenly becomes available the second day of the month before the end of both team seasons, very shortly before the end of both team seasons, or at least as MLS goes, it becomes available. And he's the type of coach that fits what the Dynamo are looking for. I think the writing is on the wall. I genuinely think, based on what I've heard, based on how this has come about, I genuinely think you are looking at the next Dynamo head coach. In thinking about it, I think it would make a lot of sense. Now, I'm going to preface that by saying I said the same thing about Wilmer Cabrera when he was brought in to take over as the head coach at the time, based on his experience with RGV, based on his experience with other teams, etc. But I think the difference is Diego Alonso has a much longer tenure of success than Wilmer did as in his assistant coach roles and otherwise. So I'm going to throw it back to you because I think you actually have a better grasp of Diego Alonso as a coach and kind of player manager.
So I follow the Liga MX quite a bit, and Diego Alonso is obviously one of those coaches that have high regards. And let me just tell you what his record was with Monterrey for the year and a half that he's been with them. 31 wins, 12 draws, and 12 losses. That's an amazing record.
Would you be okay with that with the Dynamo next season?
Oh, would I be okay? Oh my God, man! But like I said, and oddly enough, I was looking up at the MLS website not too long ago, and they had an article talking about Mexican players, the next wave of Mexican players coming over here to play in MLS, right? And they were talking about a couple of names that seem interesting. But you know what makes it even more interesting? When you hire a coach that's coached that player in another team. That gives me more of a man, that there's an actual possibility that player can come to our team because he's played under that coach. He loved playing underneath that coach, and he had a lot of success with that coach. So Diego Alonso obviously coached in Pachuca and coached in Monterrey. And a couple players that they were talking about that could be coming to MLS here in the next couple for next season is I'll throw out 2 names: Eric Aguirre and Cesar Montes. Both are Mexican national team players. They're both young. I think both of them are 22 or 23 around somewhere.
Yeah.
And they both fit needs that the Dynamo need for next season. And guess what? Both of them have played for Diego Alonso.
What? Sorry.
Can you believe it?
I,
It's,
I,
it, it's like it's like the stars of aligning for the Dynamo all of a sudden.
it's like there's a plan. It's like there's a whole plan to this thing. I don't know, man.
I don't know, but Erica Aguirre is a attacking midfielder, and we've been looking for one of those, especially since Tomas can't seem to attack, and Cesar Montes is a center back.
Yeah.
So depending what's gonna happen, depending on what's gonna happen with Fuenmayor, obviously Figueroa is too old to be thought about for the future, but those are two names that I would love to have on the team for next year, or at least one of them. And I know the fan base, especially the Mexican fan base, are real familiar with these two young guys because that's the future of their national team. Tata Martino plays them on the national team. These guys are their future. So I mean, Dynamo, I don't know how far along they are with whoever they thought they were going to sign because, obviously Matt Jordan said they had a deadline of signing the new head coach in October.
No, he didn't put a deadline on it.
He said he would love to have the signing done in October, right?
Correct.
Whoever they've spoken to, I'm not, like I said, I don't know who they've spoken to.
Yep.
I think you stop everything you're doing right now, and you get Diego on the line, and you talk to him, and you see how interested he is in being a Houston Dynamo head coach.
So my point is, you're acting like they haven't already done that. You're acting like. My point is the timing.
Well, look,
granted, it comes off the Classico loss, but you're talking about a coach that in 2019, this year, won CONCACAF Champions League. You're talking about a coach that has proven himself. I mean, that would be like firing Wilmer Cabrera at the end of last season, because we didn't make the playoffs, even though he won Open Cup.
This is.
But it's Liga MX, so it's different. But
well, I mean, look, I've said it. I said it till I had no more breath to say it with. I want my next coach to have pedigree.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I want my next coach not only to be successful in the domestic league, but internationally, international competitions. I want the Dynamo's brand to be out there. I want it to be as big as possible. Look, soccer is a global sport, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I go on Twitter and I have Houston Dynamo UK following me or Houston Dynamo France following me, that to me brings joy to me as a Dynamo supporter and fan, because that's telling me that, hey, there's a guy out there in Europe or a guy out there in France, that loves the Dynamo. How is that possible? And how much more exposure can you have by winning your international competition, winning Champions League, going on to play in the Club World Cup, stuff like that. It's something that the Dynamo really have to take a grasp on. And this signing, whoever it is, whether if it's Diego or if it's now or whoever it is, this signing is a big fork in the road for this franchise and for the upcoming years. Because this next signing as head coach can take you one way, it could take you another. And the way it's been going backwards. And from here on out, I'm trying to go forward.
For sure.
So.
And I want to throw it out there. He's also a coach that in his time with Pachuca also, not only did he make it to FIFA World Cup or Club World Cup, but his team placed third in FIFA Club World Cup back in 2017. I mean, so the guy, again, he's got the pedigree there, as you've stated, to show that he knows what he's doing. And sure, like you said, I mean, he's coming off a fantastic run of form with Rayados. But I think what's important about Diego is, again, and I'm going to point to this because I want listeners to hear this when I say this. In soccer, timing is everything. And when you see a coach that gets released by a team where he's done pretty well, he's had a few hiccups along the way, but he's done pretty well, and is a coach that is well supported there, and you see him released, and in Liga MX, yes, I understand that results matter, and coaches get released all the time that are really good coaches. But when you see it happen in the exact timeline that a team in another league has already set aside that's when they want to be announcing their coach, that they've already got a guy in mind, that tells me they've probably been in communication with Diego Alonso for a few weeks now. That Diego Alonso may have also requested that he actually move on. He may have been ready to call it a day with Rayados. Now, that sounds crazy to Rayados fans, I'm sure. But if the guy wants a chance at MLS and a chance opens up where he's comfortable going, and I guarantee you, Gabriel Brenner has contacts within Liga MX that could potentially make it happen. Because again, Brenner's business, primary businesses, while they are Houston-based to some extent, he's got a lot of sway in Mexico. And while he doesn't have the sway of a lot of the larger Liga MX guys, he still has enough that he could pull a coach like that. I'm just saying, guys, don't get excited, but it's okay to get a little bit hype. It's okay to be a little bit excited about that.
And I'm excited. I'm looking forward to this offseason. There's been a lot of off seasons in the Dynamo history, but this offseason to me is very exciting. Even though we're coming off a sorry year, I am so looking forward to this offseason. First and foremost, I want to see the head coach. Once you see the head coach, you can kind of see what kind of direction they're going to go, because every coach has a certain style, a certain flair. So, for example, let's say it is Diego Alonso. You know what kind of style he plays. You know what kind of team he's looking for. You know what kind of players he's looking for. You know what kind of players he's coached before. The thing about coming from other clubs with name and pedigree is that, guess what? Like I said before, some of those players love playing for that coach, and they're willing to go wherever that coach goes because that coach brought out the best of them.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, everybody wants to play for their national team. Everybody wants to move up and go play in Europe. Everybody wants to do that. And if I have a coach that brought out the best of me, who I know is going to challenge me and make me better, guess what? I'm going where that guy's going.
For sure. And I think I think, I want to keep talking about this because it's exciting to talk about a coach that, holy crap, would actually be an amazing get. But I think it's also important to remember too that it's not improbable. It's within the realm of possibility right now. And I like how you put it. The Dynamo are at a crossroads. We've been at a crossroads a few different times in throughout the Dynamo's existence in Houston. Number one was as soon as Dominic Kinnear announced he was retiring, that next phase, moving from Dominic Kinnear on to the next, kind of phase of the Dynamo, moving on from Owen Coyle to, or really Wade, the end of the Wade Barrett tenure, and what the Dynamo were going to do there. And then now at the end of the Wilmer Cabrera tenure / Davey Arnaud tenure, and moving in the direction they determined to move into. I think what you said, it's a very important crossroads. The Dynamo know from the front office standpoint, from a technical staff standpoint, from to ticket sales, to support, etc. They know they've got to do something to start earning that trust back with fans. I feel like they've started that process by opening up player access for media and things like that. But I think if they really want to win fans back, you have to start with a move for a coach that's going to have some value in it. If they bring in another MLS coach that has no pedigree, at this point, it's going to be underwhelming. And it has nothing to do with the coach themselves. It's just the fact that you have an opportunity here, even if it's not Diego Alonso, to go out and get a much better coach than you had in Wilmer Cabrera. So use this opportunity if you're the Dynamo to win that trust back. If you do manage to go out, if you've been working this, now here's the thing. If the Dynamo have truly been working this as long as I believe they have been, we're talking probably a month and a half they've been working on this. And if it turns out to be Diego Alonso and that's who they've been working, look, you have to give him credit. As much shit, pardon the French, that fans like to give ownership, if the Dynamo have been working this for a month, you have to give the team credit. Because they started the process before the coach was even available. And that's huge.
No.
That's huge.
Yeah. That's that. And that gives me optimism. I mean, the thing is, like, now I can't deny the fact that, that I still got to think about, like, how the Dynamo have programmed me, right?
Of course.
They've been underwhelming with certain things, a lot of things. So to have optimism and to think that, look, these guys actually thought 2 steps ahead. Oh my God, right? And to think that such a coach could come over here, wow, that's amazing. Because you think about it, they're look at this coach Monterrey Rayados, one of the biggest clubs in Liga MX, right?
Yeah.
We have Rayados play friendlies here. It seems like 2 times a year, every year.
At least
I think they have,
feels like, yeah.
Yeah, I think they have a friendly coming up here pretty soon too, if I'm not mistaken.
No,
You see
maybe with Monterrey.
you see the amount.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you see the amount of fans that show up for that club. You know,
Yeah.
anybody associated with that club. When Alberth first got here, people were excited because he was a Rayado. Just for the simple fact, nobody knew who Alberth was.
Sure.
But he came from Monterrey Rayados, and people were like, yeah, I want to watch this kid play, see what he's all about. Because he could be playing for Rayados next year because he was only on loan initially with us. So to have a coach who's won and at 2 clubs, nonetheless, Rayados, just Rayados and Liga MX, I mean, that brings excitement to people. And then, like I said, after you have him locked down, then that's when y'all can all sit they can all sit in a round table and start piecing together who they're gonna go get, what they want. And trust me, I don't think a coach like that comes into a situation where he's not gonna get players that he needs to turn the ship around.
Absolutely. A coach like that is going to come in with an expectation of spending a certain amount of money to be competitive in the league.
For sure.
And I want to touch on your point too. And I know this is probably going to get a little long in the tooth, but I think it's probably worth it because we actually have somebody to talk about, right?
Do you hear my excitement? Let's go.
You're not wrong. I liked how you mentioned, though, that a coach can inspire players to come to them. A coach's reputation, especially if he's a coach that players like playing for, can be the trigger that allows and opens the door for a club to sign players that they normally wouldn't sign, perhaps for a little less money than maybe they would sign for another team if it's a coach they like playing for. I think the reason the Dynamo haven't splashed a whole lot of cash, besides the fact that at times ownership has kind of locked that box, I think part of that has to do with the fact that players don't want to play for Wilmer Cabrera. I've talked about it before. Wilmer Cabrera last year, player poll came out and said that he was the worst coach to play for. That's hard to overcome as an organization. So you get a coach that players like playing for, and that opens up a world of possibilities for players. Not only that, you get a coach that players like playing for, and suddenly your players that you currently have, their level of talent just elevated. Not just because the coach is coming in, but because they actually enjoy playing for that coach. They enjoy working under that coach. And I don't know if it is. I can't confirm yet that it is Diego Alonso. I have no way to confirm that at this point. But any time that things have lined up a specific way and timing has proven to be very key to a lot of this stuff in the past, it usually has come to fruition. And my hope is that because of Brenner's connections, because Brenner is familiar with Liga MX, because Brenner is familiar with Monterrey, that those connections have led to this possibility, have created the opportunity to bring Alonso in. And it's not like the Dynamo are unfamiliar with Monterrey. As you've noted, they've had a very good ongoing business relationship with Monterrey for quite a while. And look, it wasn't that long ago we took a loan from them, ultimately loaned to buy, for Alberth Elis. And, so there's a working relationship there. The timing is right for this to happen. And if you can, as the Dynamo, if they do it, if they manage to announce Diego Alonso before the end of October, they will have positioned themselves to have a whirlwind of an offseason where they can create something very special in his very first season. And it may not require 17 new players or anything like that, but the opportunity to bring in, as you noted, 1 or 2 of his current players, or I guess technically now former players, and even other players that have played for him before, the opportunity to bring those players in, it's hard not to get very excited for that. And if it happens, my one question to you, because you are way more familiar with Liga MX than I am, is if something like this happens, I'm curious to know how you think Tigres fans here in Houston would handle it.
That's always the conundrum, right? When you hire somebody of that stature, obviously they played against major rivals, and how they feel this and that, how that goes, and all that stuff. Because once you're somebody, you're always that somebody, right? That like me being an Arsenal fan, once a gunner, always a gunner, right? But honestly, I think there's a huge amount of Tigres fans here, as there are Rayados fans and other fans for Chivas, Club America, all that stuff. Because you see all those clubs coming to here,
Sure.
playing Houston, and the stadium is packed, right?
Absolutely.
But I think the real question would be is how many of those Tigres fans, or even a Club America fans, or Chivas fans, or Cruz Azul fans, are ready to be Dynamo fans. Because soccer or football isn't just about your one club for a lot of fans. Obviously we all have that one club that we grew up watching, and we've been known since we were little because our parents watched it when we were little with them or whatever. But like myself, I take myself as an example. I love Arsenal, but I love Barcelona as well. And my favorite in my Liga MX team is Club America. But I'm a huge Dynamo supporter too. And I think when you make a hire like that with like Diego Alonso, you're basically saying to the fans out there, or the people who have access to the Dynamo here in the city of Houston, that hey, we want you to be Dynamo fans, regardless if you're a Club America fan, Chivas, Tigres, Rayados, doesn't matter. This move shows that we want to bring you over. We're not trying to convert you. You're gonna have your team. You're gonna be Tigres for life. You're gonna be Rayados for life. But we also want you to have love for the Dynamo as well. And I think that's what a signing like this can bring for the Dynamo. Help them garner and help them tap into that fan base, that not just the Mexican fan base, but a lot of Central Americans, Salvadorians, Hondurans, Guatemalans. They watch Liga MX. You're trying to tap into that Latino community and bring them over and make them Dynamo fans. And hirings like this, that's what happens. That's what makes it happen.
Yeah, like I said, I was just curious from a Liga, MX perspective, kind of what that sort of a move would what it would signify to current Dynamo fans, but also to Liga MX fans, that have seen the Dynamo, they know they exist, but they just don't feel that the Dynamo are quite for them. I do wonder if a move like that would be enough to pull some of those fans in. And again, if the Dynamo have been working this, not just the coaching perspective, but just knowing that they want to go out and they want to make a bit of a splash in terms of coach when the time came, whether or even players if Wilmer had succeeded this season. And their approach has been, we want to build up support, and we're angling to pull in more of those fans that are from other, fans of teams from other leagues and other national teams. It just feels like from even a marketing advertising perspective that it just fits, and would make, again, there are times when I believe some things make too much sense to be real. And there are times that I think that, some things make sense and line up just right, but still have some things that have to be figured out. And I think when we're looking at like a Diego Alonso, I think that's what we're looking at. Now, let me ask you another question. Before we start opening it up to let people ask their questions, I know you have your heart set on someone else. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to tell me why they would be your pick over, say, a Diego Alonso. And tell me why the Dynamo should be looking at this guy as well. Go ahead.
Well, for those who follow me on Twitter at Chesegovia, just in case nobody's following me right now, um, they see my love and admiration for Antonio Mohamed. For those who don't know who Antonio Mohamed is, he was a coach for Club America, also for Rayados. I think before Diego Alonso, I think he was the previous coach before Diego Alonso got there. Tijuana, and he coached in Argentina for Independiente, and he had a little stint in La Liga with Celta Vigo. Now, why do I want Antonio to be my next head coach for Dynamo? Well, first and foremost, the style of play. It's a very attack-minded style of play, and I mean, like I said prior, I'm a huge Club America fan, and he was coach of Club America. It was after the Miguel Herrera went to coach for Mexico, and that same level stayed. Those players attacked. They won. I think they won a Liga MX with him. That 1 year he was with them. When he took that same style to play to Rayados, and they won. And players love playing for a guy like that. They've had nothing but respect for guys like that. I've heard nothing but good things from a player standpoint about the coach. Now, obviously, he had issues with the front offices with Club America. That's why he was, let go or whatever. But again, this goes to a coach having pedigree. This guy, he won in Argentina. He won in Mexico. He had coaching stints in Spain. So he knows what it's about. He knows how to win. His style of play is very, very exciting. And players like playing for a guy like that. And like I said, he has a lot of connections. Another coach who has winning style in Mexico. So obviously that Brenner connection could be there as well, like you were saying previously about Diego Alonso. And let me just go, over a couple of his career highlights. He's won MX title with Tijuana, Club America, Monterrey. He's won a Copa with Monterrey. He won the Copa Sudamericana with Independiente, which for those who don't know, that tournament is kind of like the Europa League for the South American clubs. So this guy goes from club to club and wins, brings a winning mentality, plus an exciting brand of football. So what else would you want in a coach?
No, absolutely. I mean, if I'm looking at it, excluding Diego Alonso as a possibility, excluding Liga MX coaches as a possibility, if there's a guy that I personally would want to target just in general, I feel like it would have to be Tab Ramos. And I've talked about him before and why I like him so much. One, he's a U.S.-based guy, and you can't go wrong with that when you're talking about MLS. He's a guy that's had experience with the U.S. Youth National Team, so he understands how to develop young players. He understands how to incorporate young players. His style is attack, and he likes a quick passing, quick thinking team. And the other thing I've really appreciated about Tab Ramos kind of long term is he's a classy coach. And a lot of coaches can be at times, but I think some coaches can kind of forget that class side of things. Tab Ramos is a guy that just he's kind of reminds me a bit of like a coach version of DeMarcus Beasley. And I think, kind of long term, Tab Ramos is the type of guy that can help the Dynamo solidify that pipeline that goes from Dynamo Academy to RGV to the Dynamo in such a way that it pulls that burden, I think, a little bit off of Matt Jordan, so that they don't have, Matt Jordan can focus on bringing in, current age talent as opposed to having to find young guys to bring in. Plus, Tab Ramos's, scouting network is ridiculous. The guy has connections worldwide, probably as big a scouting network as does Matt Jordan. And I also think Tab Ramos is the type of coach that Matt Jordan can work with. And I think.
So let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
So let just hypothetically saying, let's say Dynamo signed Tab Ramos as the next coach, right?
Sure.
Would you be satisfied with him being signed as the head coach, and then obviously knowing his pedigree of developing young players and growing them up, and like Matt Jordan has said numerous times in numerous amount of interviews, that's one of the pillars of what they want to do for this franchise is grab young players, develop them, sell them off, right?
Yeah.
So would you be satisfied with the offseason if the offseason was signing Ty Ramos as a head coach, and then signing a few young players from South America here, and then obviously players we haven't really heard of prior, and then him coaching them up? Would you be satisfied with that?
Me personally, yes. And again, I'm a different breed when it comes to satisfaction. Like, I don't necessarily place all of my contentment with the team on the success of the team on the pitch. I am a fan that would rather see a team struggle for a few seasons but in the process be building towards a long-term sustainable, farm system or system. So I would be okay with that because I do think the Dynamo could excel with Tab Ramos in that type of a situation where they say to him, look, we're going to give you this amount of time, but we're also going to bring in some young players that we want you to prove you can coach up and turn into quality players in MLS. And we want them to be, kind of similar to an Albert Elise. We're going to bring in 5 young guys. We want to have at least 3 of them that turn out to be quality MLS starters, and can turn into assets long-term that we can turn around and sell on to other teams. And I feel like, Tab Ramos is the type of coach that this is exactly the type of situation he could work well in, where he kind of has a set goal. They know what they need to or he knows what he's got to focus on to succeed. But at the same time, it's not a totally close-ended thing either, where it's like, oh, well, once you've succeeded, we expect you to move on. We want to give you an opportunity, and our hope is that you end up kind of a long-term Dynamo coach and you help build up. And the other thing, too, that I want a coach that comes in to do is to work towards improving our own coaching pipeline. I feel like we have lost out on having a coaching pipeline, whether it's, coaches that move up from the academy and move into more professional roles, into RGV coaching or, as assistant coaches or full-time coaches, whether it's moving into Brazos Valley Cavalry, and coaching there and improving your medal there, or whether it's moving into an assistant coach role with the Dynamo, whatever it may be. I feel like we're missing out on that. And I look at successful teams, the reason I bring that up is I look at the NBA and the D League, and what makes the Vipers, the affiliate, the D League affiliate for the Rockets, so valuable to the Rockets. It's not just their player development, it's their coaching development. Coaches that do successful at RGV Vipers are usually end up on the Rockets coaching staff in some way, shape, or form. And that is integral to long-term success. You can't have one without the other. And right now, we have neither. But right now, we really don't have coaching pipeline. We don't have anybody that's really ready to step into that role from within the Dynamo organization. Go ahead.
Okay, so just to follow up on what you were saying, we've been struggling since 2014. How long do you think the fan base can withstand another 2-3 years for let's say Tab, to lift the Dynamo and to bring and to progress with these players so they can get to that winning system?
Well, but
you go ahead.
I was gonna say, okay, so I'm gonna say it this way. I believe the fan base can withstand it, and here's why. Number one, winning cures what ails you. So if you create a long-term sustainability and a long-term competitive team, you can sacrifice another 2 to 3 seasons and be, or really just another 2 seasons and be okay with it as long as you're developing players. Because the moment that you bring those players up, it creates an electricity, it creates a spark within the fan base. That's not to say you don't also bring in a couple of players, one player maybe that's a older player that is a kind of star player, but you use the other, DP slots to bring in the younger guys that we were talking about, and then TAM players as well. But I think that no matter what, no matter who the coach is that comes in, I think that the Dynamo definitely have to at least sign one guy that's going to turn that turnstile in the positive direction, because that has been a struggle. On the flip side of that, I don't think the Dynamo specifically have to be successful. I think they need to come out and they need to win at least greater than 50% of their matches on the road, in order to be seen as reasonably successful, Dynamo-wise.
Yeah, I mean, and to go to just carry on what you're saying. I mean, I think Tab would be a great coaching hiring, but I think he would have been more suited for when they were interviewing Wilmer and Barrett at that time frame. I think this time frame now is for a more established somebody with a name overall. You know, even though we know Tab has recognition, you know, for youth development and stuff like that with the U20s and the U17s and all that other stuff and going to work with them. But I think from my standpoint, and I think maybe for quite a bit of fans out there, um, they want to be hyped, man, and like and names like Diego Alonso or Antonio Mohamed or whoever else you might think of, um, that creates excitement. I think people are ready to be excited now because we've had such a long, dreary couple of years and seasons that the Dynamo fan base is ready to be out there cheering and being loud and loving this team again. Because you know, whether we like to admit it or not, Houston is a fair weather fan base. They love you when you're winning, but they don't check you out if you're losing. So that's what it is, and they know that.
No, and I don't disagree with that. Um, um, it it absolutely. I mean, I know we've had some down years. You know, I also come back to the fact that we just won U.S. Open Cup last year. You know, and I I, I think it's overshadowed by the fact that fans have fans have been set up to believe that this team can only be successful with one goal in mind, and that's MLS Cup. And I
Uh, I don't think I don't. Oh, keep going, but I have something I want to say towards that.
sure, no, and you're allowed a counterpoint to that, but I just, in my experience, I have talked to a lot of fans that just unfortunately for whatever reason they've gotten this mentality, and I think it was set early on. Now there are fans like yourself that came in a little bit later and you didn't have that expectation of MLS Cup every year, or even being an MLS Cup every year in the final. But I think for a lot of fans that were around in the very beginning, that's what their expectation for success was. I think some fans aren't that way, but I think by and large the fans that are voicing their concerns tend to be those type of fans. Go ahead.
No, so like what I'm referring to is like so Houston and their fan base and more specifically the Dynamo fan base. Yeah, obviously we would love to be going for MLS Cup year in and year out, right? What team doesn't? Let's be honest. But in that same sense, we just want we want a team that's competitive year in year out, that's striving for things, that's progressing. For example, we'll take like the Astros for example. You know, when the Astros were bad, the Astros were bad, but there was a plan in place. They took the plans, and now the sky's the limit, right? And just when you thought that there is no more and there was any more chance for them to move up, they go sign a Greinke and make their possibilities of winning a championship even higher. The same thing with the Rockets. Rockets have been that middle of the pack team for quite a bit. They go get Harden, bam, playoff team. Then they go make some moves, bam, their ceiling goes up higher. This past season, we didn't know what was going to happen. Friction between the team. Guess what? Let's get rid of CP3. Westbrook comes in, and now who knows? You know, it's one of those things that even though we just want to see progress. We want to see that the front office and the team is going in the right direction, which is up. Because the last couple of years we've gone back, and I think as far as soccer fans know, yeah, U.S. Open Cup is a big deal because it's your cup, competition. I think the people here on Discord and whoever's watching us on YouTube understand soccer that trophies is what matter, regardless if it's a Open Cup, your domestic league. international competition, whatever. Trophies matter. That's why when the League Cup came in, I was like, you know what? I hope the Diamond put a good team, because if they, at the end of the day, if they lift up that cup, even if it means nothing, it's a trophy in the trophy case. And I think that's all the fan base wants to see. They want to see a winning mentality, a winning attitude, and progression. But we haven't seen that for the last couple of years, and it's been, we had that little bump in 2017, and then it just went downhill from there. So, and then we had the little bump because of the U.S. Open Cup win. But
Okay, I don't want to, because I think obviously that's something we can talk about ad nauseum, and we'll have plenty of time during the off season to address it. But out of the blue, we happen to have a special guest that I'm going to bring in here in just a second. We're going to have the president of Texian Army join us for some questions. I've got a few that I'd like to ask him, and I'm sure Mark has a couple as well. I thought it would be appropriate, given that we had the surge on last week. I thought it would be appropriate to bring in the Texian Army, and I'm hoping to get EB on in the next couple of weeks as well. I guess 3 weeks to talk about their supporters group as well, and to give them an opportunity. We want to be fair and mindful of the fact that there are multiple supporters groups out there, and we also, when the time comes, we want to give Darby and Brian an opportunity to share about the independent supporters thing that they've begun building out, and we'll go from there. But for now, let's bring in Sam. So I'm going to bring him in. We'll see how this goes. This should be interesting. Sam is not a tech wizard. Sam, welcome to the show.
Hello. Okay, can you hear me now?
Can hear you, yes.
What's up, Sam?
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Solid.
So, Sam, first of all, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it, especially on short notice like this. I take it you were at the Beasley retirement festivities this evening?
Indeed, I was. Got rushed back here to make it in time to be available for y'all. But the event was excellent, well attended, and Bees was in a great mood. Wonderful reception. So, yeah, it was great.
Excellent. So, I mentioned earlier to our listeners that I know Texian Army, I helped with the TIFO on Saturday, and mentioned that TA has a TIFO plan that's going to be pretty spectacular. Do you want to say any words about that TIFO, Sam?
Absolutely. The TIFO, I got to give a shout out to Sarah Bejarano, our lead designer, who about 90 days ago, 3 months ago, we all got together, and there was about 8 of us that kind of got together and kind of put concept together, and even Kevin Rewind before that. We got this Beasley TIFO in mind because we were all in the monthly supporter group council alliance, and that was one of those where we're just like, sure, we'll do that one, kind of voted ourselves in, and boom, we got it. And so boom, fast forward, we had pretty much 90 days to prep it. So anyways, our lead designer kind of put some concepts together, and as everyone knows, it's a grueling process to pick a design, to produce it, to stitch it together, to trace it, to paint it. Short versions, it's many, countless hours have gone into, and we're just, I'm so excited to, and grateful to everyone who contributed to make it possible. But it's a 40 foot by 40 foot approximately TIFO that's a very classy to honor Mies himself, and super looking forward to it. On Friday, we're going to be testing it out a little bit, because there's always that fear if something's going to be make sure it's structurally sound when we test it. But yeah, definitely looking forward to the culmination of it, because on Sunday as it kind of rolls up, it's just going to be like, all right, there's all those hours paid off. And so we're real excited to share that with Bees himself, with the stadium, with the fans, supporters. So it's going to be great. I hope to see some pictures the day of. So send me anything you guys got. Would love to see it from y'all's perspective.
I will be happy to send you a picture from me in front of my TV because that's how I have to view it on Sunday, unfortunately.
Unfortunately for myself as well.
Bummer.
Hashtag
So
work
let me ask you a
penalty.
question regarding the TIFO. You know, for those who are thinking of ever making a TIFO or if ever wanted to make a TIFO, how long? Obviously, it won't be one of that size, but how long did it take y'all to create it? And how many people did it take?
Great question. So, a TIFO, let's start with the original team that kind of got together. It was about eight people that came together for concept purposes. Because, hey, not one idea should be rolled with it. You want input from various backgrounds of people. So once you guys get a concept, you make the design digitally, get a proof of concept, and then you end up measuring it out based on how much you have to work with. For example, the field goal netting is about 35 by 30 something feet. It's for ballpark around that area, and so that's the space we have to work with. So we can go smaller, bigger, but that's about the max size that we can use if it's going to be used up by the field goal netting. So once you have a concept, you measure it out, got the design, then you end up going out and purchasing the material and sewing it together, tracing with projectors and markers on your material. At that point, you've already probably spent, halfway there. You've probably spent a good 20 hours spitballing there. Sounds about right. And we haven't even hit the painting and testing. And so after tracing, after sewing, you end up painting part. And that took us a good 6 hours on Saturday. But the neat thing is that the more complicated you make the design, and this is a credit again to pointing back to Sarah, is that the concept is very, with the knowledge that you don't need to have a lot of paint or a lot of people. The more complex, obviously, the more requirements, time, the more colors you involve, the more complicated it will be. So if you can spare manpower and time, sure, make it bigger, make it more colorful and complex. But you don't want to hurt yourself or kill yourself in the process. So that's why I love the concept that we came up with, very simplistic and classy, because that's who Beasley is.
Yeah, I actually kind of mentioned that earlier since I had a chance to see the design kind of in progress. That it is almost in a way kind of classily understated in kind of the same way that Beasley himself as a player has been, not just in his time with the Dynamo, but just his career in general. So I don't want to talk too much about the TIFO because that still needs to be revealed on Sunday.
Sure.
What I want to talk about, I want to ask you a question. I want to ask you, if I'm a listener and I'm interested in Texian Army, what do I do? How do I join Texian Army for next year?
Joining Texian Army, I think, starts with kind of getting to know us and hanging out with us at our tailgates. Can always add me on Facebook, shoot me a message, share a little bit more about it. But it starts with getting a sense of knowing some faces, learning some people by name. It's like coming into any community, any group. You have to. We want to be able to meet you halfway. So come to our tailgates. Boom. I'll carry you the rest of the way. Introduce you to as many folks as possible. And I'll put it this way too. It's just coming and hanging out. There's zero requirement to quote unquote be a member. Zero. Come hang out with us and love to be introduced to you. Membership not a requirement. Membership comes with perks. Perks being unique shirts every year, discounted access to tickets for away matches and such. It's I think I want to be able to shift that and go. In the past, if it felt like something uber exclusive, I want to be able to break that mold. In that all are welcome. Please, my name and my face are out there. Add me, shoot me a message. I want to make myself available as much as possible, but definitely want to be an open, inviting community. But for more information, definitely jump onto TexianArmy.com. and follow us on Twitter, Texan Army, and short of our social media. Facebook, of course, is a big one. We're very active on there about as far as where we're going to be, what we're going to do, the latest whispers of this and that, and happenings. But yeah, that's a little bit how you can get involved if anybody wishes to.
Very cool. So, tell me what the vision for Texian Army is heading out of 2019 and into 2020 and even beyond.
Very good. So I'll put it this way: is the supporter culture, the stadium, the FO, the business office. Everything's shifting. New executives are coming in and making themselves available. It's change is happening. Long before even before the season started. It's just it takes patience for things to roll themselves out. Nothing happens instantaneous. Rome wasn't built in a day, as they say. And so with those changes, like I mentioned, changes in ticket structure, changes in now how supporter groups are communicating once a month, changes, like I said, in hiring of the business office, et cetera, et cetera. We, as a supporter group, certainly need to change with the times. And when I mean change, I want changes in, like I said earlier, be more, definitely open arms mentality to, no, you don't have to be a member to hang out with us. Changes in our, how we're more active in the city, involved in the city. Changes in how people can be part of and contribute their ideas. One big thing is under leadership, it's a lot of work, a lot of volunteer hours, and there's just it can create burnout. So I want to take some of that burnout and let people be able to have fun and contribute at the same time. So that's just a sample of changes. But I'm going to be putting on a piece of paper and rolling out more specifics here in the coming weeks, and certainly by our end of year events that we're still piecing together those details in the coming months. So the end of year event is also one of those perks as a member is coming together and celebrate, of course, the end of the season. Get more information on what to expect in the next season, what we're going to do off season, and little details like that. So, but yeah, I hope that answers your question.
I feel like it does a pretty good job of that. So, what is Texian Army really all about? What does it kind of come down to for you guys?
That's a good question. When I came in and got involved about six or so years ago, just as a casual member around the periphery, Texian Army was definitely still very much a shifting community back then in terms of people were growing up, people were leaving, and there was a lot of changeover. What I'm trying to say is that it was different than it was when it was at Roberts. And now they're kind of growing into themselves of what they are at BBVA while all this changes happening that I was describing earlier. Your question on what it's going to be for the future. That is ever evolving. And Sean, I know, I've talked to you multiple times about that. I'm ready to flesh that out. I don't want to disclose too much information quite yet before it's all put on paper. Before I know it's something I can commit to and encourage the rest of the boards to also commit to, and even members to commit to. But I definitely want to say that we need to be changing with those times. In short, I don't want to be the same old in years past. I don't think anybody wants to. And yeah, be expecting definitely more public announcement in that area. I'll be putting it out there on our social media for. and what that looks like.
So for those fans of the Dynamo that are interested in support in general, what do you think sets Texian Army apart, or what will set Texian Army apart as you move forward, to make it something that fans will want to be involved with?
Oh, so the niche, I think it's real neat is Texian Army's niche is definitely loves the tailgating culture. They love that atmosphere. You know, this is the United States, and between tailgates at college sporting events, you know, at the NFL, you know, it's a thing. And Texian Army, along with many other just smaller, just, you know, family-sized tailgates, it's a thing. It's a community building thing, and you know, we've found that fit into it. I don't think that piece of it will ever change. I know I want more involvement than just being a stadium. Yeah, I'm sorry, than just tailgating and then going inside a stadium. There's more to it. If you go to look at other cities, other clubs, their supporter groups are very community involved. That needs to be stepped up. You know, I want that to step up. This is Houston. If there's so much diversity here in how they can get involved with what's happening in Edo, how to build those neighborhoods up. You know, I don't know if there's some kind of revitalization project that, you know, we could be part of, but I'm going to be keeping my ears to the ground and ways to get involved that way. But yeah, it's tailgating is definitely how they got their niche. I want them to, if anybody's community minded, to reach out to me, and I definitely want more involvement during the off season. You know, it's difficult to shift a moving car while in motion, if that's a fair illustration. During the off season is when I believe the car will be in park and we can open the hood, and I'll be better to answer that question, you know, come at the right before the end of next season. Definitely, it needs to come out before then. But I have a better answer to that question during the off season after we've tuned up the car, so to speak.
Mark, do you have any other questions you'd like to ask Sam while we have him on?
No, I think, you know, everything that you asked is pretty much on point. I think it's fascinating, especially with all these new supporter groups coming out, that EB and TA are still there. You know, they're kind of like the main staples for the Dynamo franchise. And obviously, when you think of supporter groups, you think those two. And, you know, I hope that along with the new supporter groups that are coming up, that AB and TA, you know, can just keep growing and growing and help support the Dynamo.
Absolutely. I will say, be on the lookout on, just to echo your point, is this Sunday. I know I've been speaking with leadership of EB, and we're super excited and super proud that we'll be able to walk on the field together and present Beasley with a one-of-a-kind scarf that has both of our logos on it. You know, the teams that have, you know, both of our groups have been part of the Dynamo since the beginning. So I think it's going to be a great united gesture, so to speak, that we'll be able to offer him. So I'm really excited that that's going to happen on Sunday, the scarving of Beasley with both supporter groups that have been with him this all his career here at the Dynamo. It's going to be great.
Yeah, that sounds amazing, actually, and you know, I hope it provides opportunities moving forward for more collaboration between supporters groups and for kind of uniting the supporters section, maybe not necessarily uniting the groups, but uniting the section. I think it's I think it portends great things moving forward. With that, Sam, I want to say again, heartfelt thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate it. I know our listeners always are interested to kind of hear what's going on with the supporters groups, especially here lately, and to know that you guys are still pumping out some new things and are looking ahead towards the future. I think that probably will give some people, some hope in terms of support in the future and moving forward. And hopefully there's a few people that hear this and that are listening or watching this, and they go, man, yeah, that's exactly what I want to sign up for. And they give you guys a shout. If people do want to sign up, what website do they go to?
TexianArmy.com. Go and join. Again, if you click the join part, it's just being part of the newsletters and coming to hang out. For the benefits, that's a separate piece, but just follow the steps. But TexianArmy.com is where you need to go for more information.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Sam. And we hope we'll get to talk to you sometime during the off season and maybe update on some of the initiatives that you're hoping to launch for 2020.
I look forward to sharing it. Thanks so much for sharing your time.
Thanks, Sam. Bye.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
So, man, that actually sounds pretty great. I have been friends with Sam now for the majority of this season and have had a chance to talk with him kind of in depth, heart to heart, man to man, if you will, and get some real answers out of him as far as Texian Army and the state of things. And I can tell you without a doubt, for a fact, the guy's heart, the guy's passion is in the group. And he wants to see the group succeed well beyond his tenure as president. And I believe that he's created a foundation this season, even though it seems like the group is dwindling. I think he's created a foundation this season and is working towards creating an even stronger foundation moving forward that will enable the group to expand and grow and hopefully become a force to be reckoned with as time goes on. So, Mark, just a few, we got a few minutes left here, just really like 1 minute left at this point. Any closing remarks that you have for today? Obviously, our biggest discussion, I think, today centered around Diego Alonso and what that would mean for the Dynamo, and hopefully that is a foreshadowing of what may be to come.
No, I mean, closing remarks. I mean, just I think it's great that EB and TA are going to be walking hand to hand to give Beasley that scarf. Hopefully that's a springboard for something in the future for next season where all the supporter groups can stand together and support and have the same common goal, and that's supporting the Dynamo. And, obviously for those who are going out there to the game on Sunday, stay hydrated because it's going to be a fire game and it's going to be really hot out there. So just, stay hydrated, guys.
Good. I'm glad you remembered that. We were told to mention that, and I had forgot. Well, guys, thanks for tuning in. If you are watching or listening, or you have listened and watched to the show, and you've reached the end, first of all, thank you for listening to the whole show. That's amazing. Second of all, this show doesn't exist without you guys, so thank you. Third of all, do us a favor, like the video, the stream, share the video, share the stream, subscribe to the YouTube channel. This is our permanent home for at least the foreseeable future. And like I said, keep your eyes peeled on our Twitter at Gen Orange Radio. We will be sharing the link to the podcast location where you guys will be able to listen to this moving forward every week and be able to get the notifications in your podcast inbox, as it were, to be able to listen to the show every week, even if you're not able to tune in on the YouTube stream. So, guys, thanks again. And remember, guys, stay forever orange.
This thing off the ground.